In the silence of the night, when consciousness wavers between worlds, there exists a moment of vulnerability that few understand. I welcome you, seekers of truth, to knowledge that has been hidden from the masses for decades. What you are about to hear comes from one of the most profound interviews ever conducted with Edgar, America's greatest sleeping prophet. This conversation was quickly suppressed by those who feared its implications, for it reveals the true nature of what happens during sleep paralysis. Many of you have experienced it, that terrifying moment when you awaken, yet cannot move. Medical science dismisses it as a simple neurological phenomenon, a brief disconnection between mind and body during sleep transitions. But this explanation merely scratches the surface of a much deeper truth. Sleep paralysis is not a malfunction of the body, Edgar once whispered during this banned interview, his voice trembling slightly. It is the thinning of the veil that separates our physical reality from the spirit realm. When you find yourself trapped between sleep and wakefulness, unable to move, you are experiencing the first stage of spiritual gateway opening. Those who have suffered these episodes report universal elements that transcend culture and time. The heaviness on the chest, as though an invisible weight presses down, the absolute terror that floods the mind, the desperate struggle to move even a finger, to call out for help, only to find your body has become a prison. These are not random neural misfirings. They are the unmistakable signs of contact. The human body, Edgar explained, is designed with natural protections against spiritual intrusion. During normal sleep, these barriers remain intact. But in the state between worlds, when consciousness returns before the body's defensive mechanisms activate, these barriers weaken dramatically. In this liminal space, we become visible to those who dwell beyond the veil. They see us clearly, while we perceive only shadows and distortions of their true form. The paralysis itself is not the phenomenon. It is your body's last line of defense, a final mechanism to prevent what might otherwise occur. Most fascinating are the accounts of those who have seen them. Dark figures standing silently at the foot of the bed or hovering at the periphery of vision. Medical professionals are quick to label these as hypnagogic hallucinations, products of an anxious mind. But Edgar knew better. These beings are as real as you and I, he stated firmly during the interview. They exist in a dimension adjacent to our own, and they are drawn to the energy of consciousness as it transitions between states. Some are merely curious observers, but others seek something more. What makes this interview so disturbing, and perhaps explains why it was suppressed, is Edgar's assertion that sleep paralysis represents only the beginning of contact. It is, in his words, the first knock at the door. Whether that door should be opened is another matter entirely. Those who have experienced multiple episodes often report escalating phenomena. What begins as a feeling of presence evolves into visual manifestations, auditory experiences, and in some cases, direct communication. These are not random events, but a progression of connection. The beings you perceive during sleep paralysis are not figments of imagination, Edgar insisted. They are spirits caught between dimensions, searching for hosts, for energy, for connection to our world. Some have never lived in physical form, while others have lived and died but failed to transition properly. The most chilling aspect of sleep paralysis, one that binds together thousands of unrelated accounts across cultures and centuries, is the persistent vision of shadowy figures standing motionless beside the bed. These entities, often described as dark humanoid shapes with indistinct features, appear to observe the paralyzed individual with an unnerving stillness. In the suppressed interview, Edgar addressed this phenomenon directly. These shadow beings are not hallucinations, he stated with absolute certainty. They are spirits trapped between dimensions, neither fully in our world nor entirely in theirs. They exist in a state of limbo, and they are drawn to the unique energy signature of humans caught in sleep paralysis. What medical science cannot explain is the remarkable consistency of these sightings. From ancient folklore of the old hag to modern reports of shadow people, the descriptions remain eerily similar. This universality suggests not a product of cultural suggestion, but a genuine perception of something objectively present. These entities, Edgar continued, are often seeking vessel states, temporary or permanent hosts through which they can experience the physical world again. The paralyzed human, with consciousness awakened but body still locked in sleep, represents the perfect opportunity. The soul is partially detached, creating what might be called a vacancy. Perhaps most disturbing is Edgar's explanation of why these beings simply stand and watch. They are assessing compatibility, he revealed. Just as you would not attempt to wear a shoe that doesn't fit, these spirits evaluate whether your energetic signature could accommodate their presence. Those who experience frequent visitations have energy patterns that these entities find particularly attractive. The interview goes deeper into the nature of these beings. According to Edgar, they fall into distinct categories. Some are merely curious observers, studying human consciousness with detached interest. Others are lost souls, confused, and seeking return to physical form. But a significant percentage are what he called hungry ones, entities that feed on fear and vital energy. The terror you feel during sleep paralysis is not just a reaction to the situation, Edgar explained. It is often induced deliberately. Fear generates a particular quality of energy that these beings can absorb and utilize. Your panic is their sustenance. This explains why the experience of sleep paralysis rarely feels neutral. The overwhelming sense of malevolence, the certainty that something terrible is about to happen. These are not incidental, but intentional aspects of the encounter. Edgar spoke of people who reported seeing these figures move closer throughout the episode, sometimes leaning down as if to whisper in their ear. What they communicate is rarely remembered consciously, he said, but it enters the subconscious mind nonetheless. Seeds are planted that may influence thoughts and behaviors long after the encounter ends. Most concerning are cases where individuals report the same entity returning night after night, as though forming a persistent connection. This is the beginning of what might be called a parasitic relationship, Edgar warned. The entity has found compatibility and begins a process of gradual integration. The consistent location of these beings, typically at the edges of the bed or in corners of the room, is not random positioning. They stand at the threshold between dimensions, Edgar explained. Like creatures at the shoreline, they can reach into our reality, but cannot fully enter without invitation or weakness in the barrier. Those who have managed to break free from repeated visitations often report using protective measures, prayer, visualization of white light, or even sleeping with specific crystals or symbols nearby. Edgar confirmed the efficacy of such approaches. These beings, though powerful in their domain, respond to human intention and spiritual energy. A strong will and protected spiritual state can render you invisible to them, or at least undesirable as a potential host. They seek the path of least resistance, like water flowing downhill. What medical professionals fail to acknowledge is that sleep paralysis often clusters around periods of spiritual awakening or emotional vulnerability. It is no coincidence, Edgar noted, that those undergoing significant life transitions experience more frequent episodes. The energetic disruption creates openings that would otherwise remain sealed. Among the most unsettling aspects of sleep paralysis, one rarely discussed in medical literature but frequently reported by experiencers, is the distinctive auditory phenomenon that accompanies these episodes. In the band interview, Edgar spoke at length about this terrifying acoustic dimension. What many hear during sleep paralysis is not an auditory hallucination, but the actual sound of dimensional barriers being stressed, he explained in hushed tones. The human ear was not designed to perceive these frequencies, so the brain translates them into something comprehensible, typically a low buzzing, humming, or intense pressure sensation within the ears themselves. This sound, described variously as the hum of 1,000 bees, static electricity amplified to unbearable levels, or the roar of an invisible ocean, serves a specific purpose in the spiritual interaction. Edgar called it the whisper at the threshold between worlds, the audible manifestation of entities attempting to breach our reality. When you hear this sound intensifying, Edgar warned, it indicates that the spiritual presence is actively attempting to strengthen its connection to you. The louder and more distressing the sound becomes, the more aggressive the attempted intrusion. What makes this sound particularly effective as a tool for these entities is its disorienting nature. The vibration seems to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, making it impossible to locate its source or escape its influence. Many report that the sound seems to penetrate not just their ears, but their entire being. resonating within their skull and chest cavity. "This is by design," Edgar stated firmly. "The sound creates a frequency that disrupts your natural energetic field, creating further openings for these beings to exploit. It is both a tool for entry and a sign that entry is being attempted." Even more alarming is Edgar's explanation of what happens to the soul during sleep paralysis. According to his interview, these episodes occur precisely because the soul is caught in a precarious position, partially separated from the physical body. During normal sleep, the soul remains tethered to the body but experiences a degree of liberation, allowing for dreams and spiritual communion. During wakefulness, the soul is fully integrated with the physical form. But sleep paralysis represents a dangerous middle ground, a state Edgar referred to as the hour of the silent invitation. "What medical science fails to understand," Edgar continued, "is that sleep paralysis occurs when consciousness returns to the body before the soul has fully reintegrated. This creates a temporary vacancy, an energetic gap that other entities can potentially fill. This partial soul departure explains the sensation many report of floating above their body, or feeling a distinctive vibration throughout their being. It isn't merely a neurological curiosity, but an actual metaphysical state of partial separation. The paralysis itself is a safety mechanism," Edgar revealed. "It is the body's attempt to prevent movement until the soul has fully returned. Without this protective measure, the consequences could be far more severe than momentary fear. Physical movement during this vulnerable state could potentially allow permanent displacement of the returning soul. Those who have experienced sleep paralysis often report a sensation of something literally pressing down upon their chest, making breathing difficult and creating intense anxiety. According to Edgar, this is not symbolic but literal. It represents an entity attempting to occupy the same space as the human energy field. The pressure you feel is the resistance between two energy forms that cannot fully occupy the same space," he explained. "Like magnets repelling each other when similarly charged poles are brought together, your energy field instinctively resists this intrusion, creating the sensation of weight and constriction." Most disturbingly, Edgar spoke of the dangers of frequent episodes. "With each occurrence, the barrier between you and these entities thins. The path becomes more familiar, easier to traverse. What begins as occasional visitation can, in some cases, develop into a persistent connection that exists even in waking life. This explains why many who suffer from chronic sleep paralysis also report increasing paranormal activity in their daily lives, objects moving, unexplained sounds, or persistent feelings of being watched. The gateway, once opened repeatedly, becomes increasingly difficult to seal completely. The soul, like any traveler, creates paths through repeated journeys," Edgar said. "These paths can be followed in both directions. What begins as your soul's partial departure can become another entity's entrance route." In the most controversial segment of the suppressed interview, Edgar addressed the ultimate dangers of repeated sleep paralysis episodes, revelations so disturbing that many speculate they led to the interview being hidden from public view. Here, he spoke of what he called the point of no return, cases where individuals experienced such profound spiritual intrusion that they never fully recovered. "There exist documented cases," Edgar stated solemnly, "of people who, following an intense sleep paralysis episode, appeared to awaken normally but were fundamentally altered. Family members reported that something about them had changed, subtle differences in personality, unusual knowledge they couldn't explain, or a distant quality to their interactions." According to Edgar, these individuals had experienced what he termed partial spiritual displacement, a condition where the returning soul did not fully reintegrate, allowing a foreign entity to establish a foothold within the energetic body. These people existed in a perpetual state of spiritual trance, neither fully themselves nor completely possessed. "The medical community has no framework to recognize or treat this condition," Edgar explained. "It manifests not as obvious possession but as personality changes that might be attributed to trauma, medication, or psychological factors. The person functions in society, but carries within them an energetic parasite that gradually influences their thoughts, desires, and actions." Most alarming were Edgar's descriptions of the symptoms of this condition. Those experiencing partial displacement often develop sudden aversions to spiritual symbols or practices they previously embraced. They report increasing isolation from loved ones, not through external circumstances, but from a growing inner sense that human connection is unnecessary or burdensome. The entity seeks to separate its host from supportive energetic connections, Edgar clarified. Isolation makes the intrusion easier to maintain and deepen. What begins as subtle personality shifts can, over months or years, result in complete transformation of the individual's essence. Edgar spoke of the hungry ones, entities that not only seek to experience physical reality through human hosts, but actively feed on life energy. These are the most dangerous of the beings encountered during sleep paralysis, he warned. They create a gradual energetic depletion that manifests as chronic fatigue, unexplained health problems, and a diminishing will to live. The final segment of the interview contained Edgar's most urgent warning, a plea for protective measures that every human should understand. Sleep paralysis is not merely a frightening experience to be endured, he insisted. It is a spiritual emergency that requires immediate response. Each episode represents a potential doorway that, once fully opened, may never completely close again. Edgar outlined specific protective practices that he claimed could significantly reduce vulnerability to these intrusions. Before sleep, every person should take time to visualize a complete shield of white or golden light surrounding their body. This isn't mere visualization. It is the active creation of an energetic barrier that these entities cannot easily penetrate. He spoke of the power of intention and declaration. Vocally state that you do not consent to any energetic intrusion or interaction. The spiritual realm operates on principles of invitation and permission. A clearly stated boundary has genuine power in this domain. Edgar emphasized that the moments immediately before sleep represent a critical transition when protection is most essential. As consciousness begins to shift towards sleep, maintain awareness of your spiritual sovereignty. This mindful transition creates a protected pathway for the soul's natural movement during sleep. For those already experiencing regular sleep paralysis, Edgar offered more intensive interventions. These are not casual hauntings, but spiritually significant interactions that require equally significant responses. Seek those with knowledge of energy healing, soul retrieval, and spiritual cleansing. The solution exists not within conventional medicine, but within spiritual traditions that understand the true nature of these encounters. In the interview's most chilling moment, Edgar addressed the broader implications of these phenomena. Sleep paralysis is merely one manifestation of a larger spiritual reality that modern society has chosen to ignore or dismiss. The boundaries between dimensions are thinning globally. What was once rare is becoming increasingly common. These experiences represent not just individual spiritual emergencies, but a collective shift in humanity's relationship with unseen realms. His final words serve as both warning and call to awakening. Knowledge is protection. Understanding the true nature of sleep paralysis transforms you from helpless victim to empowered participant. These entities thrive on fear and ignorance. Conscious awareness of their nature and methods diminishes their power. Remember, the most dangerous gateway is the one whose existence you refuse to acknowledge. Protect your energy before sleep. Guard your spiritual sovereignty. For sleep, paralysis is merely the first step toward greater spiritual intrusions. Intrusions that, once fully established, can alter entire destinies. If this hidden knowledge about sleep paralysis has awakened something within you, don't let this revelation end here. Subscribe now to receive more suppressed spiritual truths that mainstream sources won't share. Have you experienced these phenomena yourself? Share your story in the comments below. Your testimony might help others recognize what's really happening to them during these terrifying episodes. Remember, awareness is the first step toward protection. Hit that subscribe button, activate notifications, and join our community of spiritual seekers, uncovering the truth about the invisible realms that influence our reality. Your spiritual journey doesn't end with this video. It's just beginning.